Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Los Angeles on Fire, presented to you by DTP. Today, this is a live FAQ that DTP is providing for anybody that needs help and support as a result of the fires that have happened and I guess are ongoing to some degree in the Los Angeles area. We have 8 amazing panelists with us today. They have expertise ranging from design and construction to insurance to estate issues, mortgage, real estate, property tax, taxes in general, and of course the mental health issues that often come as a result of these kind of tragic situations. Couple of things that I want you to know that you have access to as we provide this information. Number one, in the chat, you will see documents that have been provided by us, which include the people that are on the panel and all of their contact information, a couple of documents from the Department of Insurance that, excuse me, may be helpful. And then last but not least, the Facebook group that's been created by us, where you can ask questions and get answers to those questions on things related to the Los Angeles fires. We also ask that you place your questions, if you like, in the chat, although they will not be answered today during this particular event. Those questions will then be transferred over to the Facebook page, and the professionals or other professionals possibly will provide answers to you through that Facebook group. We won't be taking any questions today from the public. We want to get through this as quickly as possible in an effort to get you back to work. We will be going for about 90 minutes. And during that time, we have prepared questions for each of the panelists. And we're hoping that most of your questions will be answered as a result. There will be many other questions that you'll have, which of course is the purpose of the chat and the Facebook group that we have created. Just as a note, we have and are recording this session completely. So if you are requesting to be able to record this session, we are declining that request. However, we are going to be distributing the recording of this event. It's not going to be secret, it'll be public, but we want that to come from us. It'll be placed on the Facebook group page, and it will also be sent out via email to anybody that wants to provide us their email that's not already on our list. So as we get moving forward here, we're going to get right into the questions that have been provided. I've asked each of the 8 panelists to provide me with 3 questions that they think would be good to know, answers of which would be good to know. And we're going to do this in a round robin style. In other words, I'm going to ask one question of the first panelist, and then I'm going to move on to the second panelist and ask a question and so forth. And then we'll come back to the first panelist and ask them the second question. Each answer will have about 2 or 3 minutes so that it can be succinct. Again, you all don't necessarily need to know the stories behind the answers. You need the answers. So we want to get quick and to the point as to how you can be best helped with regard to the issues that you may be having. And we're, again, hoping that many of these questions will be on point. I'm going to start off with Kent Meyer. Kent is a property tax specialist. Again, his information is in the chat on the list of panelists. Kent, we're going to start by asking you about property tax relief. How does this work? When can people request this? Where do they request it, and so forth? Can you give us some information on that, please?
Yeah, I can. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Neil, for doing this today. To file for a calamity claim, and while property taxes may not be the forefront of what you're thinking about when you lose your property, they are due on the second installments in about a month, so that's when it's really going to come to a head. But in order to file, you have to get a calamity claim form, and you can get that off the assessor's website. Just go to the assessor, look up the forms, and search for calamity claim. You have 12 months from the date of the calamity to file the claim form. It's one of the simplest forms to fill out for the assessor. You should mail it in, signed and dated. You must have the date of the actual calamity, and they usually do demand a wet signature. Since COVID, I think they might take an electronic signature, and the assessor also has their email address on their website. But I always prefer to send it USPS with as certified mail, just to be on the safe side. To really be on the safe side, walk it in and get a date stamp copy because you don't want to lose that. You want to make sure they actually have it.
And is there anything else that they need to know with regard to this calamity form or process? How long does it take and what occurs?
It could take up to 2 years to review, but
Wow.
the assessor should expedite this type of claim. Um, the, the thing that you have to really worry about or consider that most people don't is what the assessor can remove from the actual assessment. When you acquire property and the assessor establishes a base value, they're required to allocate value to land and they're required to allocate value to the improvements. And once they do that, it's set in stone unless you appeal those allocations. So as an example, we're getting a lot of fires in Altadena and Malibu, Pacific Palisades. In Altadena, I've noticed that lately the assessor has been enrolling about $200,000 on the improvement value, seven or $800,000 on the land value. When the house is destroyed, they can only remove physical damage. So they will wipe out the house value. So they'll take $200,000 off of the actual roll value, but you're still stuck with that land value of the seven to $800,000, and that's what you're going to continue to pay taxes on. So when you get this relief, it's only going to be off the improvement value initially, and you can challenge that, but you have to have evidence that the property value or the land value actually went down. Um, what they will do is a pre and post appraisal, and they'll determine what the value of the property was the day before the calamity and the day after. And once they determine what the value was the day after, they look at the percentage loss to the improvements and the percentage loss to the land. And again, they will probably determine no loss to the land, and it'll be 100% loss to the improvements. So whatever is enrolled on the value is what they will give you. I looked at two homes up in the Pacific Palisades side by side. One was a smaller home built in the 50s. The other one was a larger home built in the 70s. But the one that was built in the 50s, been in the family for decades, the total assessed value is $350,000. Only a little over 100,000 is on the improvements. So they're going to save about $1,200 a year in property taxes. Whereas the larger house, it has about 3.5 million on the roll with 1.5 million on the house. They'll receive a reduction of about 1.5 million, and they'll save about $15,000 a year in property taxes. But those
All
land
right.
values remain.
Perfect. Thank you, Kent. Can somebody just tell me, please, maybe Kent or whoever's not muted, can you all see the clock, the timer? Is that in my box or is it on the? Yes, you can see it. Okay, good. Thanks. Just pay attention to that if you will. I'm going to just change that back to 3 minutes. All right, we're going to go over to Heather. Heather Colligan is a licensed marriage family therapist. It's important, of course, to understand that we're all affected differently by these types of traumatic events. So, Heather, what do you think is important to know right now about, somebody's mental health, the processing of this collective trauma, grief, and loss?
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, it's really important to be gentle with yourself and others, right? This is, it shook everything up for everybody on varying levels, but our sense of safety and normalcy, just got attacked. So people are going to have an array of feelings. All feelings are okay, not judging the feelings. People are going to be angry. They're going to be scared. They're going to be sad. And anger is basically, pain's bodyguard. So people are going to have an array of emotions. So it's being patient with each other, letting those feelings flow because you can't heal if you don't feel. So you have to find a way to release them, find somebody to talk to about it, because it is on a collective level this is happening. And then the good news about that is the healing can also be on a collective level. So it's letting other people help you say what's going on. And you may need professional help. If you're a victim of these fires, you may have lost many, many things, physical and emotional. And so there's a lot of grief support. David Kessler is an expert on grief, lots of resources with him. If you need a professional therapist, there are therapists who specialize in trauma. Types of therapy are called EMDR, brain spotting, something I practice, somatic experiencing. These are modalities that really help you get the trauma out of your body and brain. It's really kind of a different experience. So if you're really having difficulty in this acute trauma state, there's help for you. You may feel depressed. Just know it's going to go up and down. Grief is not linear. You go in and out of a lot of phases and things like that. So it's really that we're facing this shattered dream. And so most importantly, I think it's managing our nervous system. Is when things like this happen, our nervous system just goes haywire, right? And that's when we have grief brain, all kinds of things going on at the same time where we just can't function. So it's being able to soothe your nervous system. And I will be sharing, some of the specifics of that. So sorry, was that one or two? We started on me.
No, that's perfect. You don't
Okay.
have to use the whole 3 minutes.
Oh,
That was
okay.
a perfect answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. We'll be coming back to you again for some other questions a little later on. We're going to move over to some estate issues. We have Rob Miles in the room. Rob is an estate plan in Woodland Hills, California. And one of the things that we want to know, Rob, is given that people probably, if they had any estate planning documents, that's going to be one of the things they're going to grab when they need to leave, right? And maybe their house burned down, maybe it got damaged and so forth. But what do they need to do now? What do they do? Anything?
Thought you were going to unmute me.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Neil, for putting this together. Thank you for the opportunity to be of some help. My heart goes out, obviously, to all victims. And we, on the estate planning side of things, we hope that when we talk about having an opportunity to put our documents together and collect them and take them with us in an evacuation, maybe that happened some of the time, but the reality is we know that some of the victims of these latest fires and really in any type of tragedy don't necessarily have an opportunity to even go into the house and get anything. We heard how many stories of people who literally were being filmed with the clothes on their back saying, "This is all I got." But what I would want people to feel comforted by in the event that they had estate planning documents, they were not able to retrieve them and the house is gone and all the contents are gone, it doesn't mean that you don't have an estate plan. In all likelihood, certainly it's common practice for if they were prepared by an estate lawyer, that lawyer's office in all likelihood has copies of all the documents that were executed. It's certainly my practice to do that, and furthermore to scan all of the completed documents into PDFs and provide those to the clients. So we have disaster preparedness as it relates to the estate documents. We know, though, that in that environment, there's either the possibility that people can't locate the lawyer who drafted the documents, or maybe they've retired or passed on, and so there's difficulties there. There's the chance that people will need to move forward with a new estate lawyer and have some new documents drafted, but none of that means that that trust that was created doesn't exist anymore, or that the property that they own that they've now lost but was titled in the trust, that's still an asset of their trust. And so as the weeks and months and ultimately years progress, as people decide to rebuild or not, we will be able to guide them on how to be back into a good place from the estate planning standpoint. But county recorder has records of the documents that were recorded for the real estate, and other documents can be recreated with not much difficulty.
Fantastic. Okay, great information. Thank you, Rob. We're now going to move over to Jana Rosenblatt. Jana is the person who's going to help you to rebuild, essentially, from the ground up, if you will, and she's unfortunately experienced this. So, Jana, where does somebody start? I mean, people don't typically build a home, rebuild a home. Where do they start? What do they do?
That is an excellent question. And there's so many ways to answer it. But initially, I want to just tell people that, most people who lose their homes to a fire have never really even considered building a new home from the ground up. And having built 15 homes with developers and then working with people through the Woolsey fires, where I built several homes with clients, I created a podcast called From Disaster to Dream Home. And it's free, and it's on the airwaves now. You just go to any of your podcast servers, or go to the website From Disaster to Dream Home. And the thing about it is that it will talk to you. I've talked to all the professionals, the kinds of professionals who are on this call. I talked to insurance people. I talked to private public adjusters. And then I started to talk to architects, and I talked to builders, and I talked to a lot of people who have gone through fire situations. And it's really an opportunity. We take you through the process of building a home from the ground up in 52 weeks, which can be done once you have your plans. The building process can take about a year, but the whole process will take you between 1 and 3 years if you're on a pretty good trajectory. And once you have a really good idea of whether or not you are going to rebuild, it's really important that, the first thing you should really do actually is to understand your insurance policy. So that's not the fun or pretty part of the rebuilding process, but you have to understand it so that you can go to the professionals that you're going to start to speak to with real understanding of what is possible. In 2017, a tree fell on my house. My house was red tagged. I had to move out for 14 months. But the first thing I did, because even though I had built many insurance projects and I knew a lot about the insurance process, I also knew that I didn't understand my own coverage the way a professional in the field was going to understand it. And there are little pockets of money that are throughout the policy that you won't really know to understand. So what I did first was I called and then used a public insurance adjuster. You pay for their services, but they will know how to navigate the difficult process and find all those deeply hidden pockets in your policy that mere mortals can't find or see, so that then by the time you start to go to professionals, you really know what you can afford to rebuild.
All right. Perfect. Very good advice. Thank you. We're going to move over to Diane Brewer. Diane is a realtor in Westlake Village with tons and tons of experience and years of experience in the real estate business. And Diane, I know that you've been fielding calls. We all have, to a degree, maybe you more than many others. during this particular catastrophic time when fielding calls, what are the number one, the top two, top three questions, requests that are being asked of you, and how are you helping your clients?
Okay, well, first I want to say good morning and thank you for having me, Neil. I'm Diane Brewer with Pinnacle Estate Properties, top 1% in the company, and I'm in the Westlake Village office. So we are here to help anybody that all of my fellow panelists. So please let me know. There are so many multiple things that we can do to help, from pets to clothing to anything. So keep that in mind. I have all those resources. If you want it, just ding me. Probably the number one thing is the obvious. People have been looking like, where can I go and what can I do quickly? There are some people choosing to wait for insurance money and some not. Sadly, I had a listing that was supposed to come on the 30th for 4.1. It is complete ash. It was just above the Getty Villa. And it's so sad that, for my client, however, that was an investment for her. But all the neighbors on each side have actually lost their homes. So I may be needing all of you, and I will pass on information for the clients. But the number one call is, where can I go and what can I do? And something we've been dealing with as agents is the gouging. So what's sad about this situation is that you have to really look out for your clients. Things are normally renting for 5,000 or 10, things that are normally renting for 10,000 or 20, 30. It's crazy. So number one, you avoid those listings and those that are choosing to do that, in my opinion. Number two, there is a California state gouging law. So if you know someone that's experiencing this, please let them know that legally the seller can only raise, if the house was already on the market, say, let's make it easy, for 10,000, they can only raise that by law, or it is a crime, by 10%. So that would be 11,000. If the property was not yet on the market and they want to go at market value, they can go up to 60% higher on that property. So of course, these are all just list prices and rules. If there is multiple bidding on a property, then they are able to accept a higher bid. But for those that are sitting and those that are willing to go on the outskirts of this crisis, further out, they shouldn't be gouged like that if there is not multiple people interested in the property. So we've been really able to help with that and kind of pushing back in that area. Also, we do have 14 offices, so we've been getting things off market before any of the craziness. So I do think that is been really one big way we've been helping.
I'm actually going to do a quick follow-up question, just because of something that you said that bothered me. You didn't bother me, just the rule bothers me. Sorry. You can raise the rent 10% if it's already listed, so 10 goes to 11. You can raise or
Correct.
charge 60% more if it's not listed. So if the average rental price is 10 grand, you can go to 16. How the heck is that not price gouging?
Well, these are the laws that California has set into place.
Wow.
So
Crazy. That's crazy. All right. Well, politicians at work. What can you do?
Yeah, but what the big thing is to be aware of it, to avoid those agents, and just have a resource and keep pushing through and be aware of it so that you can push through. If
Exactly.
a property's, only got one applicant, they shouldn't be doing that to you, and you should negotiate that for your client.
Agreed. That's why they need a good realtor. All right. Thank you, Diane.
Sure.
We're going to move on to Steve Barnes. Steve is an insurance agent working in many areas of insurance, one of which is the property casualty and homeowners insurance marketplace, which has been crazy for a while, not just as a result of these fires, but over the past year or two or three. So what's the deal, Steve? Are more people going to get their policies canceled? Are more people not going to get their policies renewed? What are they going to do? What's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it was, as you've read, State Farm canceled about 70,000 policies in the Palisades area prior to the fires, and a good majority of all the admitted carriers had already stopped writing new business in California. including State Farm and Allstate and Hartford and Kemper and Guard. So the list was long. But thankfully, based on what's going on right now between the Governor Newsom and the Department of Insurance, they have announced that there is a 1-year moratorium on any homes cannot be canceled, cannot be non-renewed for at least 1 year.
That is good news.
Yeah, after that, it's a different ballgame. But we'll get to that probably with another question later, I believe.
All right, very good. Well, I would imagine that there is a number of homes, even that State Farm canceled, that were still insured because they had mortgages and the mortgage company probably required it. So put something in place. Yes? No? What do you think?
Yeah, for a lot of the people that couldn't get insurance, they were forced to go to, the last resort in California is California Fair Plan,
Right.
which, a lot of people think is a state entity or state funded entity, but it is not. It's basically a consortium of all the insurance companies that write homeowners business in California. And by law, or not by law, but by the Department of Insurance in California, they are obligated to participate in that fund based on their percentage of market share in California. So if State Farm's got 20% of the market, they have to be on the hook for 20% of the California Fair Plan.
Ah, got it. Very helpful. Thank you, Steve. We'll be coming back to you with more questions. We are going to move on to Randy Michelle. Randy is a CPA in Woodland Hills, California. We're going to talk a little bit about the tax issues. And, we've had our fair share of extended extensions, I call them, although I know they're called automatic extensions. But given the current scenario, are we going to be dealing with that again, where we're going to have more time to do whatever?
Thanks, Neil. Again, thanks for putting this together. There's a wealth of information and resource right here on the panel. So I appreciate that very much. And this is the latest information that's come out, and some of you may have heard it, some not. But the governor's office just announced that California will provide postponed income and franchise tax payments and filings in alignment with the filing postponement provided by the IRS. What that means is the IRS came out first and said, we're going to extend not only filings, but payments also. California conformed. So this applies to federal and California returns. This means that Californians in Los Angeles County, so anyone that lives in Los Angeles County, whether your home was directly affected by the fire or not, if your home address is in LA County, you qualify for this extension. And not only that, but even for people who don't live in LA County, if their CPA's office is in LA County, they can qualify also. There's another form that has to be filed or election, but they also can qualify. So, so again, anyone who lives in LA County, or whether or not your home was affected, or even if you're in Ventura County, let's say your CPA's office is in LA County, you also qualify. Again, all not only payments and filings. And I can go into that now, or I can wait till the next session, Neil, whatever you prefer, specifically what's been deferred.
Yeah, we'll come back to that, Randy. I do want to just clarify that you are only talking about the California tax return, or this is...
No. As I mentioned, what California adopted to the IRS ruling that everything has been deferred or postponed until October 15th. So essentially, your federal tax return and your California tax return both qualify for the extension. Okay,
so if you did owe money, you would not have penalties and interest assessed until October.
Yeah, and that's really the key difference between a normal extension and what the government has done here. And that in a normal extension, you file an extension in April, which gives you till October, but you're required to make the tax payment by April 15th if you owe tax. Now, with the payments also being extended, the actual there is no more filing extension. Extension is automatic, but any money that you would have owed anytime between January 7th and October 15th has all been pushed till October 15th.
Got it.
Without interest
Perfect.
and penalties. So to answer your question, they will not assess interest and penalties on any of those payments that you defer.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about mortgages. We're coming to Peaches Jensen, who's a mortgage broker in Westlake Village, California. Thanks for being here, Peaches. So I think what a lot of people would like to know is there any kind of relief with regard to one's mortgage payment?
Well, Neil, thank you for having us on the panel today, and thank you everyone for attending. I've been getting a lot of calls, a lot of questions, and yes, there is something in place to help homeowners affected by natural disaster. It's very similar to what happened during COVID. I don't know if you remember the pandemic, but same thing. The most important thing that I recommend is not to ignore your mortgage just because your house is affected. Contact the lender or the loan servicing company and let them know what happened with your house, and they can guide you through what you need to do. If your loan is owned by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, they have something in place to help you if it impacted your ability to pay your mortgage. And that is something that is called a forbearance plan. And what that does is that it will put a temporary period where your mortgage will be suspended. And if you are in the process of having your house foreclosed before the fire, all legal proceedings will be suspended as well. But like I said, the most important thing is to call your current lender, take a look at your most recent mortgage statement, and call the toll-free number and let them know what's going on. Do keep in mind, just like during the pandemic, a lot of people took advantage of the forbearance. It will show up on your credit report as a forbearance. However, it will not be counted as what we call a ding against your credit. But if you need to go through a refinance or purchase a new property in this case, because your house is destroyed, they will require that they may require that you have been making at least 3 mortgage payments on time since you came out of the forbearance. So this is a guideline that loan servicing companies have, and your current lender will have to guide you through it.
All right.
I don't know. We're going to go through the other questions later.
Yeah, we'll be going through the other questions. No, that's very helpful. There's going to be a lot of people wondering what to do. My house is burned down to the ground. Do I still have to make mortgage payment? All that kind of stuff. So the good advice. We'll come back with a couple of other questions for everybody in the panel. We've done round 1, as it were. We're now going to go through the panel again, ask some additional questions, and get some more information. So I'm going to go back to Kent. And the question I have for Kent is, what happens to the property tax situation when I rebuild?
Well, as Jana was discussing, it could take 1 to 3 years to rebuild. And what happens is, and this is also where the calamity claim form comes in very handy, whatever value that they removed from the roll because of this calamity gets reinstated as you rebuild. Even if it were to cost $1 million to rebuild, like I gave you the example, assessed value on a house, that's the most that they can add back plus the annual factoring. provided you stay within the same footprint or square footage of the original structure. So they would check with you annually to see if you've started your rebuild process. And if you have, they'll check to see what percent you've restored. And let's assume for a moment you don't get your permits and start construction until October of this year. And by January, you're only about 20% complete. On that $150,000 assessed property, they would add, as of January 1st of 2026, 20% of that, $30,000. With the example of the $1.5 million structure, they would add $300,000. Then they would check with you the following January 1st to see how much you've added, and they would add that percentage of the original base value. And then when you are complete, they'll send you a supplemental bill as of the date of completion, restoring the rest of the original base value plus the factoring. But they won't go above it as long as you stay within that same structure footprint. If you go over, they'll only add value for that portion of new construction. So as an example of that, assuming that house that was assessed at $150,000, that they were to add an ADU, they would pick up the value for the ADU separately. But in LA County, ADUs are running between $150,000 to $250,000 in assessed value. So the assessed value of the ADU may be more than the original house.
Okay. Well, I can imagine that this is going to end up being a bit of a nightmare for people. I can just see this as we move forward. All right. Well, talking about nightmares, we're going to come back to Heather, our marriage family therapist. Heather, I know that there are neighborhoods where most of the houses are burned down to the ground, and I'm the only survivor, or one of two. My house wasn't touched, or my area wasn't touched at all, and I'm just dealing with feeling guilty and, how can I help and all this. How do I deal with that? That sounds difficult.
No. Yeah, so I mean, so many things. Like I said, first, I just want to talk about some tips that people can do right now just to regulate their nervous system. Because, like I said, you lost everything, possibly your work, your home, your community, all those things have gone. So, regulating your nervous system is really number one. It's everything. So, this one you probably can guess is breathing. Make sure you take time to breathe, right? And you don't have to learn all these complicated breathing techniques. You just basically inhale, hold it for a few seconds. Exhale. I think it's better to exhale for longer. Releasing that, it's best if you do it with your lips closed as though you're like blowing out from a straw, just to kind of center yourself, right? So another thing you can do when you're just in a panic, you're upset, you're overwhelmed, you can just look around a room and go, let me look for 10 blue things. Just the act of taking yourself a little bit into your logical mind gives you a lot of relief. Similarly, you can do, 5 senses. What do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel in the room can help ground you. This butterfly tap is also helpful, and there's a lot of neuroscience and such behind it that helps you to calm. Something called havening, and there's a book by Kate Truitt called Healing Hands, all about this process. So with havening, it's basically you kind of change the circuitry in your brain a little bit, generate some delta waves. So you do that by going like this, hope you can see me, and you go in one direction. You can also do this, and then there's another one for your face, but I like this one because it feels like a hug. And you can do this for 5 to 10 minutes, and while you're doing it, you can just say, I'm okay, or I'm safe, whatever feels right for you. And there's all kinds of neurochemicals and things that happen in your body to really calm you and center you. Clients will tell me this is really helpful. And I talked about brain spotting. There's some self brain spotting techniques you can look up as well that are similar. Also, I like to add in the bilateral sounds that we use in brain spotting. You can get those on Spotify or whatever, and the sound goes in one ear, out the other, but it balances the left and right, hemispheres of the brain. So sometimes I'll add that with havening. I'll just listen to some bilateral sounds. I'll have my clients do that. So I can just give you really immediate help and support. But it's important to just do some body scans. things like that. Also, glimmers, I just want to talk about that. Glimmers are things in our day, little smile, you know, a sound that's soothing that we just don't pay attention to because we're just doing our day. Pause and really look for the glimmers, and then kind of sit with it in your body for 10, 20 seconds and notice how you're feeling in your body, enjoying that glimmer. And maybe it's even writing, keeping a glimmer journal right now, just to like have those things you can hold on to that feel good, that remind you I'm okay. And just remembering too, you're not doing this alone, right? This is a collective experience. It's a collective healing. I would also say make a list of tons of coping skills and use 1, 2, or 3 back to back. You know, so thank you.
Perfect. Great suggestions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Heather. We're going to come back to our estate lawyer, Rob Miles. And Rob, so my house burned to the ground, let's say. It was in my living trust, titled to the living trust, because, you know, you did it. And so it's perfectly correct. And now I don't have a house. So how does that work?
Well, I mean, how does it work? You don't have the structure. You still own the lot, perhaps, right? In all likelihood, you still have value there.
Right.
Kent pointed out many times the greater, at least on the assessed side, is the land as opposed to the structure. But you know, when people have an estate plan, and for that matter, those who don't, maybe someone doesn't have an estate plan in place like yourself, but they lost their house, and now the question is, what's the point? Do I need to have an estate plan? Please consider, it's not as though estate planning is just for those who own a home. There are, you know, a comprehensive estate plan provides a lot of other documents, many of which, or at least most of which, are necessary during life. So yes, having a living trust is critically important. The main reason people do it is to avoid probate. So you have your house that's an asset of the trust. It's been titled into the trust. That's a recorded document. We can retrieve that. But consider the other documents, the Advanced Healthcare Directive that most of us need, the Durable Power of Attorney for Finance. These are during life documents where we need someone to step in perhaps and to do things for us from a financial standpoint, or you know, maybe we are incapacitated and in a healthcare environment but can't communicate with medical personnel. These documents and those agents that we've named, I think in times of tragedy like this, it becomes even more to the forefront, those who don't have a plan, how important it is to have it. You know, it's just another way to ensure that if, you know, the unthinkable happens, that there are people who can step in and make sure that things are taken care of. So, you know, ultimately, with regard to the homeowner, this is a blip in time. You know, it's going to feel like forever, but at some point the decision will be made to either, you know, rebuild and then have that structure again on the same APN, or to move on. And if that happens, then certainly acquiring another property, like if it was you, Neil, and God forbid you had lost your house, but you have a trust and you decided to move on and purchased another property, we would want you, of course, to remember to take title properly so that that new home is an asset of your trust.
Right. Lots of things to consider, no doubt. Thank you, Rob. And Jana, you know, I'm going to rebuild my house. I've made that decision. I'm going to rebuild my house. But boy, there were so many things that I wanted to do now. Oh, you know, like I almost consider it an opportunity, as dark as that may seem, but there are opportunities, I suppose. So what do you do to keep me on the straight and narrow here? Because I can get carried away, can't I? I got to be careful, don't I?
Indeed, you do. You know, so the professionals that you're going to be seeking out will hopefully be people who can help you do that. The architects and the builders that you're going to meet by, you know, going to some events in your community, talking to friends and neighbors, learning about these people and interviewing them carefully, are going to be the people who are going to guide you through the process. And I just want to give you a little bit of a description about really what an interior designer does differently than your architect and your builder, and why you should consider making an interior designer part of your team. just like when you are in a hospital and you need someone to be an advocate for you, the interior designer is like an interpreter, especially if they've had experience building a new home from the ground up. Once you understand that and how all the puzzle pieces get assembled, it's a really, it's an easy process to reproduce, but you've never done it before, so you're not going to have any idea what to do. In the design process, it's really important to understand what you have to work with, whether you are going to be mostly covered by insurance and then you're going to put in some money on your own. Starting the design process with your architects and your builders and your interior designer is going to, if you have an idea of what your budget is, those professionals can help you work within it. Preferably, if you're working with someone, again, who has worked through insurance processes, they will be like a coach and able to hold your hand through the design process. An interior designer will envision your house from the inside out and be able to better interpret with your builders and your architects what your personal goals are. It's a little bit more of the psychology and the sociology of what you're going to want in your new home than the architect who's looking at the perimeter and all of the structural rules. And also, working with an interior designer, they usually know what the current costs of things are. Many times the builders and even the architects are going to be using a computer program to assess the budget that they're going to present to you, but those are not, they're not California specific. They're not your taste and what you want to achieve specific. And the interior designer can look at all those things and understand that the budget might have put, for example, countertop slabs in at, at $1,500 a slab, but the reality is that those slabs may be $6,000. And the interior designer is going to know the difference between what the rough budget has spit out, which is a good starting point, and where the client and the area you're building in are going to make those different than what the computer program is going to initially tell you.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you. Diane, we're going to come back to Diane Brewer, our realtor in Westlake Village. What, if anything, is going to happen to the real estate market, particularly in the areas that have been badly burned? Is it going to be affected one way or another, do you think?
For sure. Obviously, as everyone's been speaking about all of this rebuilding, we're talking several years. So there's two things I want to talk about. Number one, let's talk about that client who I was supposed to list on the 30th. We were going to list the property for 4.1. The value that she's been given currently from her insurance is $900,000 below what she owes on the property. So we're dealing with this firsthand. She's got to decide now if she wants to rebuild or if we are going to just sell the property as land. So it's a TBD, honestly. It's a lot for her to decide here. We already have people coming in looking at, basically offering eventually when able to buy the land. The lot was basically about 7,000 square feet, 2,000 square foot home, was built in the 70s. So there's a large patio, which a developer would change. A lot of the neighbors have put in additions to make a second story. So, my advice is probably she can afford to just hold tight. If she dumps the land quickly, she's not going to get probably what it's worth. Someone will love to scoop it up, sit on the property, and until it's a better time to build, but I'm advising her that we should probably hold tight if she can. And that's kind of the direction we're probably going to go. And then she's got to decide, is she going to rebuild? So as everyone's mentioned, it's going to be a several-year process. It's definitely going to affect the market. On the contrary, outside of the area, prices are going up because now, once again, we've already had a housing shortage here in the desired area. The number one place we have been getting calls from the Palisades in Malibu is Westlake. That's been Westlake, Calabasas is seeming to be where the majority of our clients and our top producing office are in the city are going. So of course, now we have multiple offers and things are going over asking back to the pandemic. So on the outskirts areas, prices are definitely going up and we have more of a shortage. As far as obviously the Palisades in Malibu, it's going to be a long time before the community itself is rebuilt. There will always be people who want to live there, but it's going to be a while until we're back to, in my prediction, till we're back to status quo and market value there. But all of the outskirt areas, also near Altadena, I have a listing come in Burbank. We already are having calls coming on that because people have to push out. So I think for those who are selling, it's probably going to be a good market for them.
Yeah, very good. It's going to be an interesting ride for the
Yes.
next 1 to 3 years, no question.
Mhm.
So, Steve Barnes, our insurance expert, back to you. Clearly, we've got some insurance issues that we've got to deal with. And I'm, again, if I'm one of these folks who unfortunately has lost my home or need to move because it's been badly damaged, I'm going to go maybe rent something because, I can't afford to buy anything at the moment. What happened? Can I get renter's insurance on the rental property that I'm about to buy? Excuse me, to rent. And secondly, what is the insurance going to cover? Are they going to cover my rent? They're going to cover the mortgage in the old house? How does that all work? I got both to pay, right?
Yeah, well, first, in regards to the coverage, if this was 3 days ago, I would have said it's going to be very, very hard to find a renter's policy. I got inundated by multiple real estate offices that are dealing with clients that are renting homes, and a lot of the markets that I thought would still be open, every carrier was coming up with a, moratorium in this area. The good news is Wednesday, I got an email from Mercury Insurance that they now have a dedicated group of underwriters specifically to approve HO4 policies, which is a renter's policy for anyone that's been displaced by the fire. So there's now definitely a market, and a market with a good carrier. In regards to what's covered, a renter's policy, it has nothing to do, obviously, with the property. It's going to cover your personal property. So it's going to cover your stuff. It's going to cover your clothes, your furniture, your electronics, your computers. If you were to take the roof off the house and turn it upside down, anything that falls out is your personal property. That's what's going to be covered. The other main thing is liability. If you're renting a house and you have friends over and they injure themselves and sue you in addition to the landlord, you're going to be covered normally from between $100,000 to $1 million of liability coverage, depending on the limits that you choose. And the other thing, just like on a homeowner's policy, you're going to have fair rental value or loss of use. So if I'm renting a home and there's then water damage to that home and I can't live now in my rental and I have to go rent something else or go stay in a hotel for 6 to 8 weeks while they're fixing the damage, they will cover those additional living expenses. So I would say those are the main things you're going to find on a renter's policy.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Steve. And over to the tax issues, we're going to go back to Randy Michelle, our CPA out of Woodland Hills, California. And Randy, earlier you talked about extensions, and that's all very well and good. Are there any tax issues, though, that I have to deal with, given that I've lost my home? When I file now, of course, I'm filing my 24, forget about that because it happened in 25. But when I'm filing my 25 tax return next year in January, February, wherever it was, are there things that I need to be cognizant of with regard to that return vis-a-vis what happened to my house?
As far as tax ramifications, at this point, they have made no rulings or any kind of notifications on the 25 returns. The only thing what we've heard so far is that not only are the 24 returns again automatically extended till October, but there are a series of any payments that were due again between January 7th and October 15th, and I'll briefly list what some of those are. For example, if you normally pay quarterly estimated tax, there was a fourth quarter tax payment for 24 year that was due January 15th of 25, and that's included in the deferment and the moratorium. So your fourth quarter estimated payment for 24, and if you have any tax due when you file the 24 return, again, that's all been deferred to October without any interest or penalties. But also remember, regarding 25, as you brought up, Neil, for those who generally pay quarterly estimates, the first quarter of estimates for 25 are due April 15th, the next one is June 15th, and the third one is September 15th, and they all include that time frame of deferment. So your 25 estimates, the first three, have all been deferred until October 15th. But just people need to be aware that, kind of like we experienced in COVID, when that October 15th time comes, everything becomes due. So we stress the importance of, even if you elect to defer, which for those people who owe a lot of money, my suggestion would be defer, because you might as well put the money in an account, invest it somewhere for the next 6 months, and get some earnings on it, because they're not the entity government's not going to assess any interest or penalties. But just make sure you have the money set aside, and that's why we're encouraging our clients to get everything processed early, just like normal situation, normal circumstance, so that your return is ready to go by April 15th. At that point, you have a good idea of what's due for 24 and what your quarterlies are going to be for 25. And now at least you have 6 months to plan for that and make sure the money is set aside. And the other thing for you, for our panel and everyone listening, is whoever it is you use for your tax preparation and tax advice, is just kind of keep in mind, because you have a deferment until October 15th, you probably don't want to go to your tax preparer in September and say, okay, I'm ready. Because what's going to happen then is your preparer is going to say, well, I'm glad you're ready, but there's no guarantee we're going to get you done by October 15th. So it's important to get everything done early, just kind of keep in your brain that things is normal. The one advantage we have is that when things are ready, you now have a decision and you have an option to wait.
Good advice. All right, thank you. And back to our mortgage specialist, Peaches. If I own a business that has been affected by the fire, and maybe my business is gone, I don't know, but if it has been gone and my income's been affected, do I get any help with regard to my mortgage, or am I still on the hook, at least for the time being?
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on what our CPA Randy said earlier about being outside of the affected zip codes. So if you don't live in the area, your house was not destroyed by fire, and your business or your employer's building burnt down, that could affect your income and the ability to make your mortgage payments for a period of time. And that's when you really need to contact your mortgage lender or your loan servicer to discuss about options. And one of the options that they're going to present to you is the forbearance that I discussed earlier. I don't know if this is a bright side, but one of the bright side is that homeowners who have their homes destroyed in the fire, if they had a reverse mortgage on it, they don't have monthly mortgage payments anyway, so a forbearance wouldn't be, they don't need a forbearance, but they would still need to contact the lender anyway about insurance, about rebuild, what their options are for the property. If they do sell it and sell it for land value, how would that look? So it's very important to communicate with your current mortgage lender. I do have and if people have difficulty contacting their mortgage servicer or their lender, because I'm sure they're inundated with calls right now, there is a hotline number that people can call, and it's a toll-free 888-995-HOPE, or 888-995-HOPE is spelled out. It's 4673. So it's 888-995-HOPE or 4673. It's a free assistance, free confidential support, and it is a HUD-approved housing counselor.
Peaches, if you would please put that information in the chat, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
That's great stuff. We're going to come back. That's round two, if you will. We're right on time here. This is perfect. Thank you all for hanging in there and answering these questions. I know they're going to be extremely helpful to many people out there. Ken, you asked me to ask you this question, and I want to know what you mean by it. It says, what are the options if we decide not to rebuild and sell instead?
Okay, so if your house is damaged beyond 50% of either land or improvement, there is a code in the revenue taxation code that allows you to transfer your base value to another property. So if you decide not to rebuild on this property, you can sell it. And of course, it's going to be a lot less than what the original market value was the day before the calamity. But the assessor, when they take your calamity claim form and make a determination as to what the market value was pre-fire, that's the market value that you can take with you to purchase a new property rather than the discounted value of land only. And you can find a replacement property, purchase that, and as long as it stays at or below the purchase price or the sales price of what, or I should say the market value that it would have been before the fire, you can take your base value with you. So but that requires a separate claim form than the calamity claim form that needs to be filed with both counties.
And you said that calamity claim form was available at
on the
where?
assessor's website.
On the assessor's website.
Right. So if you sell your vacant lot and purchase an existing house, and let's say your house was worth $3 million the day before the fire, and you purchase a home for 2.9, 3 million, 3.1, because you can actually go 5 to 10% above, depending on if you do it within 1 year or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And say you pay 3.1 million for the new house, you can take that old base value. I gave you the example of the house that was assessed for $350,000. You can take that 350 to the new home. The claim form for that is also on the assessor's website and has to do, let me see if I find it really quick. It's called.
Yeah, if you find that, just put it in the chat, would you?
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Heather, you actually answered all of your questions at last time. However, I want to give you an opportunity to, add a couple of comments and, just give us your best advice on how to feel better about this situation, if you
Yeah,
can.
I'll just tag on a little bit because I mostly just talked about some immediate coping tools. But the key is, particularly with a survivor's guilt feeling like, say, it didn't happen to you, but like me, it's happened to many of my friends who've lost their home, lost everything. And how do you show up and support them? The key is really listening, validating their experience. Don't bombard them. Make sure you aren't putting your own angst, or fixer self maybe onto them. It's just listening, asking them what they need, just saying, hey, is there one thing I could do for you? Would it be helpful if I made dinner? Would it be helpful if I gave you a hug? Would it be, just ask them, what can I do for you? They may be still so overwhelmed. Some of my friends are like, I can't even talk. I don't even know what I need right now. give them space, but let them know, let me know if there's something I can do for you. You know, I'm here. Just letting them know, validating it. With the survivor's guilt part too, I mean, I think you just have to do action. That's like volunteering, advocating, being available. I think all of us on the panel today, that's what we're trying to do, is how can we do this little thing to help, to give support, you know, looking for those things online too. I've noticed there's a lot of pro bono therapy services and things like that being offered. Just there's a lot of resources out there. I haven't even got my head wrapped around all of them, but I think taking part in that so you can help other people. And then it's just, like I said, calming your own nervous system while you're supporting others. So my heart goes out to everybody affected in so many ways. And thank you for having us all, Neil.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Rob, you've also done a wonderful job answering your questions on the estate planning side. But what would you like to add just to kind of conclude your comments?
Thanks, Neil. So I think, right, estate planning is just one of those things, but I think it's not what's necessarily top of mind as people endure tragedy like this. And so I'm just so grateful. You look at a panel like this and you look at the participants, and I think when we go through these tragedies, and it's just part of life, they know they happen. We wish they didn't. But look how people react. People are good. People generally want to help each other. And I am always kind of struck by, not surprised by, but it's striking how quickly people will jump into action to try and help. And sometimes it's, it's physically, and sometimes it's just doing something like this. But it's heartwarming, and encouraging to know that none of us are alone, really, and we're not forced to go through this stuff alone. We have professionals in all areas that are very willing to jump in and help and give their time and anything else that they can. And there's just people. You look at, on the news, which I know we all watched, saturated by for a week and change. But look at the collection centers and how they had to, tell people we don't need any more clothes. We don't, because there was such an overwhelming outpouring. So I hope we can kind of focus on, as much as you can't see it in the midst, of a tragedy, but I want us to remember that piece of us too. There's a lot of good stuff out there and good people, and I think it helps gets us through, to the next time that something happens. Being prepared is obviously so critical, and those who are the most prepared probably can endure tragedies a little easier than those who aren't. But those who maybe aren't certainly have an opportunity to think moving forward. I'm going to do more. I've been doing this now almost 25 years. I cannot count how many times I've had clients come in and say, gosh, we've been meaning to do this forever. But, now Uncle Tim passed away and it's really top of mind. Let's just use this opportunity to be mindful of all those things that we kind of think we should do, know we should do, but have been putting it off, and do it, because we feel better when we prepare. We have a greater sense of control over our outcome. But anyway, thank you, Neil, again for doing this. I think it was, I hope, very valuable. I know it was to me.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Rob. Jana, you've also done an incredible job answering questions, but any finishing thoughts, concluding thoughts?
I do have a couple of things I want to make sure to point out. First of all, 1 to 3 years is a best case scenario. In normal times, this is a doable time span to design and build a new house. But this is not normal times. How soon you can start has a lot to do with your emotional mindset and when you'll be ready to move on and face a lot of the decisions that you'll have to make. The delays that I see ahead are limited resources in architects and builders, the permitting process, which is cumbersome in the best of times. Hopefully the city's going to do what Malibu did after the Woolsey fire, which is find a way to be able to more easily expedite the decision-making process in permitting, and not having realistic expectations of what can be done, of what you need to do, is you can really get stuck in a sort of inertia. And seeking some support, like Heather was talking about in your community, people who are going through it will be a great way to be able to move forward. As people begin to figure out where they're going to move safely during this time, because it could be, several years that you're going to be in a temporary location, a couple of things to figure out. First is there are options of furnished spaces. You have nothing. I've experienced that with my Woolsey Fire people. If you rent an empty space, you're going to have two choices. You can either rent furniture and have that expense every month, and you're going to feel like you're in a temporary situation for what could be a long period of time. My suggestion is really consider purchasing some major pieces of furniture. Don't overdo it, but things that then when you do have a house to move into, you can take with you. They're already pieces that have become old friends, so that you're not entering a sterile environment without something that you've gotten used to. Certainly you should buy your beds. You should buy the things that are going to make you feel like you're homesteading in your location. And it can be much more cost effective. There are some funds at the beginning of the process, either through FEMA or through some insurance policies, that might give you a little bit of an amount of cash to use to be able to sort of set yourself up in a comfortable way and make as comfortable an environment as you possibly can. And then my best final advice is don't fall into the temptation of over designing your new home, as it will mean that you'll be overbuilding what you really need, and the cost will grow beyond your comfort level. This is an opportunity and a creative process, which at some point will hopefully in the near future actually become enjoyable. But realistic eyes through that process are going to help you be able to build within your budget, extend only where you're comfortable, and make a new home so that you can move your family back and continue your life. This will be a glitch when you look back.
Right. Thank you. Excellent advice. Diane, what would you like to add as your concluding words?
Hi, everyone. I want to thank everyone for the wealth of knowledge. I have been taking notes, and I do plan to share a lot of the information today with clients who were not able to come on. Thank you, Neil, for putting it all together. Once again, always fabulously. And I do want to know if we can get a copy of the video so I could share it with clients. I also want to remind my fellow panelists that sometimes we are good about making posts or advertising just our regular services, but this is a good time to offer free consults, free advice, all of these things for clients. I may be referring some of you, clients of mine that can become clients of yours. And on social media or wherever you advertise, it's a good time to just put free information. For example, we've done these are the places you can go for a free meal for firefighters. These are the places where you can go to have pet care complimentary, or whatever it is that people are dealing with in crisis. So it's just a reminder for all of you to get off of our standard stuff that we would be putting out and maybe have lists of things that could be helpful, because I have to say you're all super knowledgeable. I'm happy to be on the panel with you, and I really appreciate all the information you saved. If anyone is out there, this is a great group of people, and you will be dealing with some wonderful ethical people. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. Steve, give us some words of wisdom as we close up here.
Okay. As I mentioned, you've got that moratorium for a year. So what can you do to make sure that after that 12 months is up, that you've got a better chance of either being able to find new insurance if you do, or keeping your insurance, or fire mitigation measures? Insurance companies are very, very big now on defensible. You want to make sure you have defensible space around your property, and you do that by making sure you trim your trees, you clear all your brush, make sure there's enough space between any vegetation and your home. And then you also want to install fire-resistant landscaping materials. The second thing would be home upgrades, fire-resistant materials for your roof, for the siding, for the windows, and make sure your gutters are always clear of debris, and then just be very proactive with that documentation, showing your insurance company, proof of your mitigation efforts with photos and invoices, and that should help substantially.
Perfect. Thank you. Randy, on the tax end, I do have a quick question. It wasn't one of the questions, so if this is something that you want to answer at another time, it's fine. But I was thinking about the fact that you've got people that lost business structures, rentals, or an apartment, small apartment building, whatever. And the tax situation for those is different than the home ownership. And I know that won't affect them until they file next year. I understand that too. But there are disaster rules for investment properties?
Yeah, it's a good question, Neil, and I will answer it before I go into my final comments. In that there is, even though many of what we call casualty losses since 2018 have not been allowed, it's still allowed for a national disaster, which obviously these fires have been declared a federal disaster. And so you are allowed a tax deduction, which essentially, without going into a lot of detail, your actual deduction is you take the fair market value the day before the fire of your property and the value the day after the fire, which in many cases could be zero or just the value of the land, as Kent referred to. But it's the drop in the value from day before to day after, that difference, less any insurance proceeds you receive, that amount is actually what we call a business bad debt, which unlike personal capital gains and losses, the business bad debt can be taken all in 1 year, and if it's not all used up, it can be carried forward. So there is a lot of significant tax benefit there. And if you're in one of those people that either a home, not so much personal resident, but any type of business or investment property, i.e. rentals, would qualify. So you should definitely consult your tax advisor about that. I just wanted to quickly list the things that I haven't mentioned that do qualify for this extension. And I've already talked about, obviously, your personal income tax return for 24 and the estimated payments between January 7th and October 15th. The other thing for shareholders of an S Corp or partners of partnerships or beneficiaries of trusts who were taking advantage of this pass-through entity elective tax over the last few years, the final payment on the 24 pass-through entity elective tax is due March 15th of 25. That's been deferred till October. The first down payment on the 25 pass-through entity elective tax is due June 15th of 25, and that's also been deferred till October. Business entity, corporate returns, pass-through entity returns, again, the partnerships, the S Corps, normally due March 15th and April 15th, also been extended to October 15th. I mentioned the individual returns, and even tax-exempt organizations that would be due May 15th has also been extended to October. So those are my final comments. And again, if there's anything we haven't answered, any of this panel, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to help and give any information. I want to add one more thing. It overlaps a little bit on Kent's area of property taxes, but the governor has just issued an executive order, which actually not for everyone in LA County. This is specifically for certain area codes, zip codes rather. And my guess is these are all the zip codes in like Palisades and Altadena, the ones that were specifically affected by these fires. But there are certain zip codes where your property tax second installment that was due, April 10th of 25, has been extended to April 10th of 26 without interest and penalties.
And then you're going to owe double?
That specific zip codes, probably the ones directly affected by the fire.
And then will you owe double?
Well, eventually you're going to owe it all. That they're not going to,
I mean, on April 10, 26, so you're going to owe last year's and this?
No, following Kent's advice and filing those claims for reassessment, I mean, eventually you'll still owe everything that's due,
Right.
whether it's the same or whether it's less. So they're not letting you go from these, but they're deferring them for a year.
Right. I'm just wondering when, I mean, if they're deferring 25 into 26,
Yeah.
when do you pay 26? So they're not deferring it. They're not deferring 26 into 27. So in 26,
No.
you're probably going to owe twice. Kent, what's your answer to that? Do you know?
I don't disagree with it, but in this sort of instance, the tax collector has to do everything manually. So they're still going to send out delinquent notices that are going to scare the shit out of people.
Right. All right. Well, this is one of the good things we can follow up with on our Facebook page, and obviously by contacting the panelists individually for these types of questions. Peaches, why don't you finish us up with some mortgage comments for a minute?
Well, the last thing that I would suggest is to beware of scams. During times of crisis, there is an increased risk of scams and fraud. So protect yourself by asking lots of questions, reading the materials provided to you, and avoiding any solicitations requiring upfront cash payments. Your mortgage liens are public record, and they can be purchased by scammers as a list of leads to solicit homeowners out of their money, because they know that during this time homeowners are very vulnerable. So be very, very careful when you receive a call, a text, an email. And if you receive something in the mail, they can make it look so official that you think it's from your lender, or you think it's from HUD, or you think it's from the government, and you have to read the fine print. I'm available if you have any questions with what you've received. I have gotten a few mailings from people. They would email it to me and say, Peaches, is this legit? I just got this in the mail. And it doesn't have to be during the time of a disaster like this. During normal times, they get things like this, but especially now, be vigilant on what you hear, what you receive, and what you read.
Thank you. Well, we are coming to the end of our Los Angeles on Fire live FAQ. I want to thank our 8 panelists, Kent Meyer, our property tax specialist, who, by the way, really deserves the credit for this event, because he's the one that called me on Monday and said, I have some great ideas. I'd like to get out there. What can we do? And that was the impetus for creating this event. So thank you, Kent, for that phone call, that email, and getting me off the dime. That was very, very helpful. So thank you, Kent, Jana, our interior designer and construction specialist, Peaches Jensen, our mortgage specialist, Rob Miles, estate lawyer, Heather Colligan, a licensed marriage family therapist, Randy Michelle, our CPA, Diane Brewer, our realtor, and Steve Barnes, our insurance agent. We appreciate your time and effort. Please, if you have not already, this is for everyone in the room, and maybe even particularly our panelists, to make sure that you take the Facebook link out of the chat, because I want you to go there. Now, I will be going there regularly, and I'll let you know when there's questions that I believe you can answer. But I want you to go there and look for those questions. And if you've got things that would be helpful, please post. Let people know what's going on. This page is going to remain up and there to help people who have gone through this tragic situation. Just in case not that I need to make this sound any worse than it already is, but according to the governor's office here, we have over 40,000 acres that were burned during the last couple of weeks, of which about 96% was the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. The Palisades fire, almost 24,000 acres, and the Eaton fire over 14,000. There were 15 fires in total, including some small ones that were under 50 acres. But nevertheless, it took a lot of firefighters to deal with those issues. Unfortunately, there have been 24 fatalities and 12,300 plus structures damaged or completely destroyed. This was, I don't know if it was the most devastating fire in Los Angeles ever, but it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. It's certainly top 2 or 3, I would have to imagine. It's quite something, and there's a lot of people that are going to need a lot of help for several years. The economy is going to be affected both negatively and positively. As jobs are developed, I mean, the construction industry is probably going to be, well, you're probably not going to be able to find people to do things for you in the construction business, I would imagine, over the next several years. So we will keep helping people as much as we can. We're the divorce transition professionals. This has nothing to do with divorce. This is just helping people, and the folks that came onto this panel and the many other people who are here and many that are not, that have expertise, have information, have a network that can help people. I think Rob was the one that said it, but I know that you all feel the same way, that we are here to help. That the one thing that I see when there is tragedy is that we all come out to help. We being the population at large, people are extremely helpful and kind, opening up their homes, their businesses, their food, more donations than ever. It's quite incredible to see, and of course, very, very heartwarming. It gives you hope, doesn't it, when you see some of the stuff that doesn't go so well, and then you see the help that people are pouring out for our fellow citizenry. So it's just heartwarming. So again, thank you very much. This entire thing has been recorded. I will get you all the recordings. I will figure it out, but I have to figure out how to get a 90-minute recording distributed. When you have long recordings, getting them where they need to be is often more difficult, but it's obviously doable. It happens all the time. The technology is there, and I will make sure that you have access to it sometime early next week. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourself. I do hope that everything remains calm and that there is no more tragedies occurring anytime soon. Thank you all for being here. This is Neil Palache. I'm the CEO of the Divorce Transition Professionals. This is the Los Angeles On Fire FAQ event, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Neil.
Talk soon, everyone.
Everyone.